Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona. He's Mike Beer coming to you from a still dreary Pimlico, but it's only Wednesday and things have plenty of time to dry out by the weekend, and we're hoping things do dry out, so the turf racing is just fine for Preakness Saturday when they run the race right before the Preakness, the Grade 3 dinner party. This one drew a large field of 13 runners going the mile and 8 distance, and you definitely want to do a deep dive into this race to handicap it, so pick up those handicapping plans at DRF.com to handicap this Preakness. You can click at Classic, Formulator, Timeform USPPs, whatever floats your boat to handicap along with Mike and I. And while you're getting those past performances, also pick up the betting strategies. I'll be writing those, giving out my picks for all of these races at Pimlico on Saturday, analysis as well as how I'm going to bet these races. So make sure to check out that and more at shop.drf.com. Mike, this is one of the more fascinating races to handicap on the Preakness undercard this Saturday. You can make a case for a lot of horses in this dinner party.
This is an excellent race. For my money, it came up the best betting race on the card for sure. You can just make cases for tons of horses in here. You have all, some logical older horses that always show up, and you've got a bunch of horses who were really good last year, newly turned 4-year-olds, and you expect them to get better.
I guess the horse to beat based on the resume is the number 13 Trickery, but he's drawn in a really tough post all the way on the outside, so I'll be really intrigued to see what the tactics are for John Velasquez, because he is a horse that does have tactical speed, and we'll take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race, and it might be wise to try to get really aggressive with a horse like that, because there is not much pace drawn to the inside of him, and you don't want to get hung out wide around these turns.
No, you do not. Whatever Johnny decides to do there, he's got to make the decision pretty quick, though. You either got to decide you're going forward and try to get over, or else you just got to take him back and hope you can get over save ground that way and then come running at the end.
And the two horses that are shown forward on the pace projector are the number 5, Abrumar, as well as the number 2, Crabs and Beer. Neither one of them is exactly a confirmed front-running type. Abrumar is at least a horse that's shown tactical speed in some of his races, but he is cross-centered at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, so we'll see where he runs. If he comes out of this race, it's a real paceless affair for such a large field, so I think trips are going to be tough to decipher from a handicapping standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, and you would think that just on the expected pace alone that Saffie Joseph might really want to run this horse in this race, because Abrumar looks like he could easily make the lead in here.
A sneaky pace player might be the number 9, Irish Aces. We'll talk about him a little bit more when we get there. But let's go through this field, beginning with the number 1, Devan Propos. He is one of 2 Phil D'Amato trainees shipping in from California for this race. And Mike, this is a horse that primarily has been going longer distances than this, though he has run reasonably well when they've gone a little bit shorter, like this 1 1/8 in the past. And he has just gotten one less than ideal trip after another. He was really wide last time with no cover for most of his trip, made the first move, got run down at the end by a Tetlon, who's a really progressive horse out in California in that division. 2 back, another trip where he was just 3 wide around the turns. They tried to save a little bit more ground in the Hollywood Turf Cup. He was really ranked in the early stages of that race. He got no pace to close into in the John Henry prior to that. I think this is a horse that's a lot better than his recent results make it appear.
Yeah, I saw those same things too. And sometimes with horses like this, I'm worried about them dropping back to a shorter distance, and I'm not really worried about it with this horse. I think it's really going to help them being drawn to the rail here too, David. They can just move forward with them, keep cover, save a lot of ground here, and then just hope the trip works out.
And this is a handy horse. And with Luis Saez aboard and the other D'Amato running, having no speed at all, I wonder if they might go forward with him. I don't think it would be the worst plan in the dinner party. The number 2 is Crabs and Beer, a horse who was second in this race last year at a pretty big price, going off, well, at only 14 to 1. I think the name might have something to do with that at Pimlico. Since then, Mike, his form has been a little bit up and down. He's gone into the new barn of Chuck Lawrence recently and got back to the turf last time. Exits a race that a few of these are coming out of the Henry Clark, and he didn't have an ideal trip in there, but I also never felt like he was winning.
Yeah, I agree. He's just kind of hard to make a case for. He's a really cool horse. And it's not, I don't want to sit here and suggest he's totally overmatched in here, but as well as he ran in this race last year, he was just kind of picking up pieces in that race, David, and this year's field came up way tougher.
The number 3, Signator, is a horse that we're familiar with, having competed most of his career in New York, and he is one that had a lot of hype surrounding him at the beginning of his career. Given his pedigree and the purchase price, it looked like the sky was going to be the limit for him, but he never really took that next step forward on the dirt. He switched him to the turf at Tampa Bay Downs over the winter. He got the job done in that race, wasn't so impressive, but gutted it out. Then we'll take a look at his last race, the Henry Clark, last time out at Laurel, where he stepped up against Stakes Company on the turf. And Mike, I like this performance a little bit better because he just put in that relentless finish that we kind of always wanted to see from him on the dirt. And he was going away at the end. And I don't know if you watched the gallop out of this race, but he opened up like 7 lengths on the field, an eighth of a mile past the wire.
Yeah, I do think he ran way better last time than he did in his turf debut, where he just had a huge pace to close into. Yeah. I liked the finish he put in that race, David. I also just felt like he got a perfect trip in that race. And we're going to get to a horse who's drawn right next to him in the gate in this field, who was also in that Henry Clark, and that horse did not get a perfect trip in that race, and I'd kind of rather have the 4 over the 3.
Yeah, the number 4, Neat, had some real trouble, especially in the early stages of the Henry Clark. It was actually Crabs and Beer that kind of came over on him into the clubhouse turn, got steadied, and then shuffled back. And he was trying to rally on between horses at the end, couldn't quite get there. Mike, I wonder if this horse, though, has really taken a step forward from his 3-year-old season, where it felt like he was opportunistic in some spots and got good trips, was placed in the right sorts of races. And I didn't like his race 2 back in the Kilrow, which felt like a race where he could have been competitive. And I just wonder if the progression is there.
Yeah, and he got a good trip in the Kilrow, too. I mean, it was off of a little bit of a layoff there, and they shipped him across country, but he still, I feel like he should have run better there. I do think he did run better last time, though. It may not look like it on paper, but he had no chance. The trouble he got into the first turn, and then he's sort of in between horses. Even Signator got ahead of him somehow on the final turn of that race. He's behind that horse. I don't know, man. Nothing worked out for him last time. I can see him running better this time.
The number 5, Abramar, shipping up from Florida for this race for Saffie Joseph. If they do decide to run here, he's a cross-entered at Gulfstream, like I mentioned earlier. He could go forward and potentially set the pace in here if they want it, because he's got that good tactical speed. I just didn't love his race off the layoff last time, Mike. He got a good trip, popped out in mid-stretch, and just couldn't quite finish it off.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really like any of his races, to be honest with you. And he did win that stakes race at Gulfstream early last year. They just let him crawl on the early lead, and he managed to make it stand up. I don't know, maybe he'll get a similar trip in here. I didn't see him wire in this field, though.
Mike, the number 6, Balnikov, I know, is one of your favorite horses, and he's been a little snake-bitten. He doesn't visit the winner's circle that often these days, but he can be prone to getting less than ideal trips, and his running style has a lot to do with that. But, I mean, I'll let you go through it. He's had his fair share of excuses recently.
Yeah, the running style just really, it's problematic for him, and, you know, so he needs to get a little bit lucky in his races, but when he does get lucky, this horse can really run. He obviously got the right trip when he won here last year over soft turf. He ran really, really well that day, but again, that field wasn't as tough as this one. I'm not sure why they decided to try to make him a marathon horse recently. I don't think it's really worked out for them. He's run fine, but he's better going shorter. The last time he went 9 furlong was the Pacific World Cup Turf Invitational. Go back and pull his replay in there. He had no chance in that race, but he was running. If things work out for him, he can easily beat this field.
Yeah, and even last time in that Elkhorn, I agree, he doesn't want to go 12 furlongs, but it just seemed like Giroux had no plan to get him into the clear once he commenced his rally, and he just kept angling into traffic down towards the inside. He's had trips twice in a row now, so we'll see if he can work out a better journey under Flavien Prat. The number 7, Cash Equity, is the other Saffie Joseph runner in this race. He is also cross-entered at Gulfstream Park, so we'll see if either of these horses do ship to Pimlico for this Preakness card. Mike, this is another horse they tried to make into a marathoner recently. I guess it moved him forward marginally. He at least showed more tactical speed in those longer races because he was a horse that would get really badly outrun going shorter distances. Now they're cutting him back to the 9 furlongs, and his lack of speed could be a problem once again in a race like this.
Yeah, I don't like his running style. It feels like if they do decide to run him here, he probably will wind up at the back of the pack again rather than being up close like he has been recently. I also feel like, and he finishes pretty fast in his races, but I also feel like there are some races in there where he got there. I think he's got a little hang in him too.
Mike, a horse that I definitely gave a look to, and we talked about it a little bit before we came on, that I couldn't quite get there, but I thought about it, was the number 8, Crystal Quest, because he took a big step forward off the layoff last time at Tampa Bay Downs. We'll take a look at the stretch run of the Turf Classic, where he beat Florida breds, including his stablemate Forever Super, who was the odds-on favorite. Crystal Quest got dismissed at 14-1 off some less than stellar form at the end of his 3-year-old season, but proved superior. That 95 buyer makes him competitive in here. He just has to prove that he can take that form outside of Florida.
Exactly. One of the newly turned 4-year-olds that we were sort of referencing in the Open, though. It feels like he has a chance to really move forward. I feel like he was even better than he looks like he was on paper as a 3-year-old. He ran some really good races. He's another one that ran here on Preakness Day last year over a soft turf course. He had a brutal trip in that race. I'm not so sure he wasn't going to win if he didn't have to check on the turn and lose all position in there. He was running again at the end of that race. I feel like they over-raced him last year, David. He really lost his form at the end of the year. He came back a fresh horse last time, and I know it was a weaker field, but I mean, he was just running those horses over, waiting to get clear all the way around the turn, and he really jumped up on figures.
I briefly mentioned the number 9, Irish Aces, earlier with regard to the pace scenario. They put the blinkers on last time, Mike. This is a horse that had been a one-run closer for much of his career. They put the blinkers on, broke from the rail, and they just sent him straight to the front end. Got comfortable up there and was able to hold off that field and win. Only a 95 buyer. Don't love the field that he was beating. There were a couple horses gaining ground on him at the end that would be huge long shots in here, not really competitive. He's got prior form that makes him one of the major players in this race. He just always lacks a little bit of finish for me, and I didn't see it improve last time even when they sent him to the front end.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, maybe the new running style for this horse will sort of pay dividends for them, and he'll get forward and he'll get the right trip and a win. I mean, he's logical enough on paper. He's run a bunch of races that make him a contender here. I just don't like him that much.
We'll take a look at the stretch run of the Canadian Turf that the number 10 Fort Washington won last time out, where he actually runs down Irish Aces, who we were just talking about. And this is the race that made it difficult for me to like Irish Aces, Mike, because he had a look at this thing. He got out of the top of the stretch after a good trip, and Fort Washington just runs right over the top of him. And Fort Washington is a horse that has shown on a few occasions that he can make that big late run even when the paces don't develop. So that is going to be a feather in his cap here, but he's still going to have to navigate a lot of traffic in a large field. He certainly has races that make him one of the horses to beat in here. It just comes down to trips.
Yeah, exactly. He's I can't argue with anything you just said about him. He always shows up too. That's the other thing that I think you really have to like about him. He's a really reliable horse. If the trip works out for him, he'll come running at the end, and we'll see if he's good enough.
The number 11, Fulmineo, is another horse that's coming out of that Henry Clark. He didn't have much early speed in the beginning of that race. He did get to save ground, though, around the turns at the very least, which some others were not able to do. Got out in the stretch, was finishing towards the late stages. Never looked like he was really catching Signator on that occasion. He's just going to have to take a step forward second off the layoff.
He is. Kind of looked like a prep to me, though, last time, where they just sort of let him get out run, didn't really make a move on this horse till the stretch. They just let him roll through the stretch there. He's making up ground at the end. I thought it was an okay performance. This is a horse who I think, another one, a newly turned 4-year-old who was better than he looks on paper as a 3-year-old, but he's going to need to get the right trip, and he's going to need to jump forward to beat this field.
Mike, you know I like to pick some crazy horses at times, and I couldn't quite pull the trigger with the number 12 Desvio, who's going to be a gigantic price in this race. But this is a horse that I want to use underneath somewhere, because if you watch the trips out of the Henry Clark, he's the one that really lost ground around the turns. He had no cover, 3 to 4 wide most of the way, and I know he finished 6th in that spot, but he was at least finishing at the end going the mile distance, and he's a horse that I do think really wants to go farther than that. So stretching out the extra furlong, he's going to appreciate it. And he ran some better than it looks races given the trips that he got in New York at the end of last year. So I think he is coming in a little dirtied up.
Yeah, all 3 of those stakes races there through the end of last year. The first one, the Virginia Derby first, and the 2 New York races. He ran better than it looks at all those races. And he won his first 2 turf starts. And you make a good point about the distance, too. I don't think it should go overlooked. The added extra furlong of this race really helps this horse.
And then rounding out the field on the outside is the number 13 Trickery, who we mentioned, based on class, probably is the one to beat, because he was a grade 1 winner from last year, albeit in the Belmont Derby, which is a grade 1 probably in name only. But he came back in the Maker's Mark Mile off the layoff last time and ran into Carl Spackler, who I think cemented his position clearly at the top of his turf division right now. And Trickery was no match for that foe, but at least was a step forward in his first start as a 4-year-old coming off the layoff. This is a horse, though, that got some really good trips when he was successful last year, and you have to be a little bit concerned that he might get hung out wide from this 13 post.
Yeah, 13 post is no bargain in here. He's obviously a major contender in this race, but the trip is going to have to work out for him from out there, and it's not like he's going to be some kind of great price where if you like him, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. He's going to get bet in here, David, and he's still going to need to work out a trip.
Mike, I think we both went to some Phil D'Amato tradies in this race, but you've got a different one than me on top.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody who's been watching these videos. I'm a Pimlico fan. I like that they're going to cut him back in distance for this race. I'm going to hope that Preakness gets him the right trip in here.
And I've got the number 1 Devan Propos on top. I'm hoping he's a slightly better price based on the dirtied up form coming in. He's not gotten ideal trips. He's finally drawn an inside post position, and I don't mind the turn back to the 9 furlongs here. So the number 1 Devan Propos for me, and the number 6 Balnikov for Mike in race 12, the race right before the Preakness on Saturday, the dinner party. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.